Let's turn our attention to the BBC and the annual BBC report yesterday showing, well, just how much BBC stars are paid and also how many people are no longer paying for their licence fee. Let's talk about this with former BBC executive Aaqil Ahmed. Good morning to you, Aaqil.
Morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, I mean, you've got to wonder sometimes if the BBC know how to read the room when people have been in dire sort of financial straits the last few years, and some of their highest paid stars got massive big pay rises, sometimes in the tune of, you know, double figures. And you even had the likes of Hugh Edwards, the highest paid star of the last, among the highest paid of the last year. He was suspended in July, but for 3 months he had a pay rise, a whopping great 40 grand pay rise, even though, you know, he ended up being off air for most of it. What on earth was the BBC doing, handing out big pay rises, way above inflation in some cases, to some of their biggest stars when they're paid for by a tax on the British people?
Well, I mean, I think I hear you when you talk about, you know, reading the room. It feels a bit weird, doesn't it, in a world where we're a cost of living crisis, etc. I don't know individual contracts. I mean, individual contracts can have things built into them. You know that what that's like. There's nothing you can do about that. There are issues with regards to people's annual kind of like increases, etc. So I don't know about individual things, but you're right. You know, just talking about all of this whole subject on a purely personal capacity now. It feels strange, you know. I mean, I know that from my time. Look, I tell you what, you know, not everybody gets a pay rise. You know, I had last 9 years. When I went back to the BBC from Channel 4, I didn't get a pay rise in 9 years because I was a senior executive, because we knew that we couldn't get pay rises because times were tough even then as well, and it wasn't the right thing to do. So it's not like there's a cash cow and people are throwing money around.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because I know loads of people who work at the BBC as, you know, producers and cameramen and women and doing, you know, the dog's body jobs. They aren't. People really don't. They are not on that sort of money. A lot of them are paid better than people in the private sector in a lot of cases. But they're all hopping mad because they're seeing these stars on 6-figure salaries. In the case of Gary Lineker, a 7-figure salary, and going, well, hold on a minute, why are you paying that so much? But let's just go through the list. I mean, Gary Lineker, 1.35 million. He hasn't had a pay rise. Get my little violin out. We've got Zoe Ball, of course, presents Radio 2's Breakfast Show in the top 10. And then we've got football commentator Alan Shearer, we've got Fiona Bruce, Lauren Laverne, Greg James, Stephen Nolan, among the highest earners, and then Naga Muchetti and Nick Robinson. Some got pay cuts, some got pay rises. What amazes me about some of these figures, though, you get some really big names that we don't know about. You know, the Tess Dailies, the Claudia Winklemans, Michael McIntyre, Alex Jones, people like that. We don't know what they're paid because they're paid through commercial arm or paid through a production company, which is bizarre that we don't know that because they're still being paid fundamentally out of our taxpayers' licence. But
it's a commercial sensitive thing for the production company. That's the problem, because then they start going into the... No, that's for the production company to actually put a list of what they pay. The BBC, I know what you mean, you know, it's very grey, but the fact of the matter is there has to be some kind of commercial kind of respect given to that.
I understand that, but the key thing is it's fundamentally is still coming out of our licence fee. But this is the key thing. There are some figures that some journalists, I mean, no disrespect to say BBC's Katja Adler, what did she say, European editor. I mean, she's on like 270 grand or something. The idea that, oh, well, if Katja Adler left, you have to keep her. She's been off the job somewhere else. If she left, then absolutely the swathes of viewers would leave the station. Of course they wouldn't. It's quite bizarre. There are some big stars. There's the Michael McIntyres. There's the Gary Linekers. You could argue, yeah, these are the stars. People want to see them. Their shows get great viewing figures. But there are other people you think, I don't know why people think that they should necessarily be able to command that figure from the taxpayer. If they're being paid by a private company, it's no one's business. If they're being paid by people who are forced to pay a tax upon pain of being sent to prison if you don't pay it, then it's outrageous, isn't it?
No, well, it'd be unfair for me to pick on any individual, right? But I agree with you 100%. Look, it's a market, right? And in the market, if there are people out there, and we know, look, you can, irrespective of what you may think personally about his politics, you know, Gary Lineker is a consummate professional in the world of football. On the market, he'd get a lot more than what he's getting now. I think we have to all appreciate that, because it's a silly world we're in, but that's what people pay. There are times when I look at those lists, and I've been a commissioner, I've had to kind of like hire book presenters, etc. And there's a time when you look at it and you think, having worked outside the BBC myself a lot as well, you'd look at it and say, would somebody hire you as well? And I think there's an element of that. There's an element of fear. There's an element also as well, what we've got to remember is when people are on those contracts for a long time, some people have been working for 25, 30 years. You know, you get what they call grade creep, you get salary creep, every year. And at some point you think to yourself, my God, does that person...
Yeah, and is there not these young people who are on a pittance and with no job security? I mean, what about 500,000 people fewer are paying for the licence fee? Now, some of those were not eligible to pay anymore, over 75 or 85, whatever it is, but an awful lot of people are just going, I'm not willing to pay for this anymore. I don't watch the BBC. I'm not willing to play anymore.
I think the BBC are not unaware of that, to tell you the truth. I think it's been building up for quite a long time. What you've got is a change in the complete ecology of the whole broadcasting, full stop. Yeah. And when you think about streaming, when you think about advertising, everything's... streaming, they don't make money, the streamers at the moment. They're all losing money.
It's all with a view to one day, yeah.
Advertising is down, the BBC licence fee, everybody, it's actually a mess.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of competition, so it'll probably coalesce at some point, but the key thing is people don't want to pay for it. People say, well, what do you pay? What do you pay? If you're not paying my salary, it's none of your business, is the response, as opposed to people who do have to pay the salaries of these BBC stars. Aaqil Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us, former BBC executive in chief, someone who's been on the inside and the outside of the BBC, giving their perspective.